When you, as the young lords, when you actually decide that this is the place, it's being underutilized, you came in a proper way, you asked for permission to try to use this church, this temple that you figure, well, that's what part of the church mission is. Any church wants to serve the underprivileged, the underserved, that. So you find an angle and you find the resistance, rightfully so. I mean, there was, the church is always, this particular church, I understand from the current pastor, that they embraced the good that you wanted to do. They just didn't appreciate the methodology, the methods that you use. So that's there. That's understood.
They didn't even know the methodology. Okay? Yeah. I mean, let me be upfront. That was part of the It's one thing if somebody came up to us and they said, "Look, with all due respect, what you stand for is not what we stand for. What are we going to do? But it never got to that point. It was immediately get the hell out. And well, when could we show you what we do in other places? Get out. And then when Felipe got up that Sunday to try to say, look, this is what we do, what we're about, and they had.
And this is the congregation he's speaking to.
Yeah.
And he's going to present what the young lords want to do.
Right. And there were about 12 other young lords here with him, and the police came out from hiding places, clubs swinging. Felipe got his arm broken. They arrested like 11 or 13 young lords, and there was blood all over the place. And one of the, I think Pedro's sister picked up the brass can.
Pedro Pietri,
yeah.
Right.
The poet. Okay.
Because his family was part of this church.
It's the biggest family in the church.
And we actually all.
That's Carmen Pietri, right?
No, it was another sister.
Okay.
And it was just so. Then our attitude was, oh, you want to play that?
Right. But you guys were not occupying the church. You had just come in to try to get permission.
Right.
And even then, the resistance was such that was it a setup?
Oh yeah, no. They had contacted the police. The police were, drooling at the chance of getting us. So they were hiding out here. And a couple of minutes after Felipe got up, they came in, and it was horrible,
But wait a minute. Just so that we're fair to.
I'm being fair.
As fair as you can be, you're being fair as NYPD. But the fact is that prior to that, let's sort of set the viewers of City and State TV.
This is how the young lords started. Okay, we tried to find something, like what Chacha correctly has said in Chicago, that the people will be motivated by observation and participation. If they see what you're doing and it makes sense, then they'll join in. So we looked around, and the first thing we saw that was what they call the garbage. But right. Garbage in El Barrio is not like garbage, downtown. Garbage in El Barrio meant like things that were never going to get picked up. Abandoned cars.
It's not like the El Barrio that you see here. These
Correct.
are right. In other words, that it's clean. They pick up
of the
garbage pick up once or twice a week in the summer.
Right. Meanwhile, we know the garbage is getting picked up a lot more, and when you go just down this avenue to the rest of Manhattan.
Lexington Avenue.
So we, again, not because we came in saying, we're going to be bad, because we didn't think we were going to get people like that. We're going to organize people like that. We wanted to show first that we were like your children.
An agent of change and good.
Right. So we went to the sanitation department, and they said, you spicks, get out of here.
What did you go to the sanitation department for?
For brooms.
You wanted to clean the streets?
We were cleaning the streets. We had that doñas in our community with the robes and the little brooms with the bun.
The doñas are the ladies.
The seniors, the elders in our community.
Doñas.
So for a couple of weeks, they would come out and join us, and we said, look, wait a minute, this is the city's job to do this. So we go to sanitation, we ask for bags, we ask for brooms. Basically, they say, get out of here. So we said, okay, we got out. And on a following Sunday, we went out again and we started to clean garbage. The garbage piled up, and mysteriously lighter fluid and matches appeared, and the garbage was burnt on 3rd Avenue. And garbage after that started to get picked up in East Harlem.
But actually, wait a minute.
There was a period of about a month there where there was.
You were just collecting garbage.
Right, when they sent Arnie Segarra to
Arnie was working. Arnie Segarra was working for John Lindsay, the mayor.
That's
John B. Red Lindsay. Yeah. But so that we really tell the proper story here, and I want to be fair. You guys had done. I'm not saying it was the wrong thing to do because the garbage wasn't being picked up. So you just decided to spread it across
3rd Avenue.
Right.
3rd Avenue.
Block the traffic.
And then somebody just put gasoline
what happened
or lighter,
was,
and
be
then
honest, then the fire
department had to come.
What we didn't anticipate was that when the fire department came, because it's summer in 1969. You know how it's summertime in about it. Now we didn't. This was not us, but people started throwing things. People from the community.
They started throwing things at the fire.
Right. Then the fire department called the police, and when the police showed up, and they showed up, you know, coming out swinging, people fought back. Things were like being thrown at them from the rooftops, bricks, and this. And I remember that first time.
And you guys were saying, "Stop!"
No, we were when the police showed up. You know, you kind of have to join in. But I remember running. You know, we all had to scatter. We all had to scatter, and you took off your beret, and all of a sudden nobody knew. And I remember running as far as Fifth Avenue, and catching my breath. And two young lords were with me, and we noticed there's like 5 other guys from the neighborhood, and they go, "Where do we sign up?"
Really?
Yeah. That's what happened.
So when the agent, so your best, it
It
was the police officers and coming in and trying to prevent you from doing the right thing. And while they weren't, the New York City Sanitation Department used to be, I think it still is, mostly lily white. It's one of the agencies that still remains lily white.
You know, had they not said, "You Spicks, get out of here," we probably would have, you know, treated it differently. But, you know, telling us Spicks was like waving the, you know, in front of a bull. You know, you're asking for it. And look, I'm not going to like shy away from. We're not going to shy away from. We were militant from day one.
We're a
That was the
paramilitary
point,
organization.
because we knew
Exactly.
the difference between, in the black movement, turn the other cheek, versus Malcolm X saying, you know, by any means necessary. And we were,
You were with Malcolm.
you got it. Now, it's nice to know that today we find out that the two of them were actually coming closer together. But back then, most people didn't know that. So if you had to say, well, which way, we're more like Malcolm X, you know, because and the inspiration of the Black Panther Party, you know. It's like one of the Panthers once said there was a big meeting for an anti-war demonstration, and all the peaceniks were there, and you know, and the chief of staff from the Black Panther Party at that time said, "Listen, if you want peace, you got to fight for it."
In the meantime, in this setting, New York City got to a point where it was being called Fun City. John Lindsay, right? John Lindsay was the mayor. Things were out of control. As a matter of fact, in '69, I think he was hit with one of the biggest snowstorms the city has seen. It was chaotic for him. So how do you deal? They sent the guy. They thought this was going to be small. People start coming in, media people. I remember not only Geraldo Rivera, but Jose Chegui Torres, who was at that point at the height of his boxing career. He came in to support you. There were other personalities. Pete Hamill was writing about you guys. There was people supporting Luisa Quintero at El Diario. You had people coming in to be supported. Jimmy Breslin also. They loved. I mean, it was great copy for the tabloids, but it was also an interesting story developing. It wasn't Hollywood. It's been told in El Barrio, in East Harlem. What are you guys sensing? You know, you're still occupying the church. How long was that period of occupation for the church?
A lot of what you're
And the
saying is
programs.
happening before, during, and after
Right.
the occupation.
Right.
The occupation was 11 days, from the end of December '69 to the beginning of January 1970. Right. What happened? Somebody from television told me years later, because we didn't plan this. What happened was they said, "You realize that you took over the church on the slowest news day of news week of the year." So in a way,
Christmas.
they didn't have anything else to do. And here we were like a gift, you know. And then when you came here, it was alive. There were hundreds of people.
Young
with
people.
Poetry from all generations. I mean, there was you know, food. There was clothing drives. There was a lot of music. There was poetry.
Free health clinics.
There was a lot of things going on here, and
But
people were coming from Philadelphia. People were coming
Community folks.
Yeah.
Wanting to
We showed
support these
the
young.
Battle of Algiers. We showed
from,
one
yeah.
night here.
I mean, people came because
Chegui
also,
actually got it for us.
people came because they also, like the people from Philadelphia, they were like, "Hey, how do we get this going in Philly?"
Yeah.
You know, that was actually how we started spreading outside of New York.
So all of these things are happening simultaneously. You're trying to maintain your occupation of the church, but you're getting support. You're getting media attention. You know, all of a sudden you guys become, you know, nationally known, internationally known. Who are these young, crazy Puerto Ricans, which by the way, they weren't all Puerto Ricans. The mission that you started out with, what was in your head to serve the people, did that get lost somewhere, or did you continue the program and dealt with all this? You know, because there were people who say, "Oh, these guys, they were only around for young lords, were only around for 3 years."
No,
but
it didn't get lost. It didn't get lost at that point, you know, and it didn't get lost for the first few years. You know, we were on point. you know, to use the modern terminology. There were two main points that pushed us. Puerto Rico, and it's a colony of the United States. And then the condition that we live in here, and that this was not right. This was not because, you know, of our own doing. So it was also to inspire people, to elevate people. And we didn't even realize how much that was needed and how much that was appreciated. The first time that we marched in the Puerto Rican Day Parade in 1970, we had no idea of the response. People were cheering, and we actually looked behind us like, is Tito Puente coming? And it was us. It was remarkable, you know, the feedback that we got. And it told us that we were doing the right thing.
Ramon Vélez, didn't he try to stop you from that? He was president of the parade at that point.
Yeah.
And you guys went on, and he called the police on you, didn't he?
No, that was 1971.
That was after.
That was the following year, and that was a little different. That was because also the tactics, the strategy of the Young Lord had changed somewhat. The parade wanted to put police at the head of the parade. And we had been dealing with police in not a good way for the 2 years or whatever prior to that. So we said, no, this is wrong. You should put a contingent of poor people in the front. And this is what's going on in this community. There's a big fight with the people that ran the parade. They wanted the police. And back then, if you wanted the police, it also meant, you know, it wasn't like today where you've got like the Hispanic police march with pride. It meant that we were saying, they wanted to say we've assimilated, we're into the United States, and oh yeah, we happen to be Puerto Rican, but we're like American Puerto Ricans, you know. And there was a whole other connotation with that, and we said no. So we said we're going to be at the front of the parade. And what happened was there was a meeting with our chief of staff then, Juan Fiortis, was meeting with the head of the police at Fifth Avenue to try to broker a peace. And we were amenable. We didn't want to start, the Puerto Rican Day Parade, we didn't want to start anything. And I don't know if it was one of the groups was a support group, shows up with the biggest Puerto Rican flag. It took like 20 people to hold this thing, and they're coming across, and some cops decided no, and they knocked them down and stepped on the flag.
Uh-oh.
Now, at that point, even
Puerto
Ricans,
Seinfeld.
Yeah,
way before Seinfeld.
Even Puerto Ricans on the sideline who were saying, you know, like, what are those young lords doing? They went, wait a minute, did you see that? All they saw was cops was stepping on the Puerto Rican flag and laughing, and that's it. You know, it was like you might as well say, okay, on your mark, get set, fight. And that's what happened.
Let me look. This is so much to take in. We're back in the church, and the Young Lord's way. We do this whole thing in the church. Before I forget this, there were some things that happened here. Clear this up, because you know, Mickey, I was looking through the book. So far, Mickey, you've written this book. Now it's in paperback edition. We took the streets. And we took the streets really means it's what you recall from those days. There's all kinds of versions. I'm waiting for you to write your tome.
So am I.
I'm waiting for Felipe to write
Juan,
his.
yes.
I'm waiting for Juan Gonzalez to write his. I'm waiting for other people that actually have their own versions, the people that maybe collaborate. There is a film that has been controversial also, put by Iris Morales. We'll get to that in a minute. But inside the church, can you just explain briefly what happened with that supposedly casket that you got arms in here, weapons in here?
No, the casket is
That's the second time. We took this church over twice.
You see, you're educating me here at City and State TV.
The first time we took it, there was no. Yeah, the first time we took the church, there was no casket. There was no.
You were asking for permission.
There was no. Yeah, I mean, and the thing that like to this day surprises people. How'd you do this? How did you? Because we had the support of the community, and since the cops were looking. You know, after the thing that happened that November '69, where Felipe got beat up,
right?
You know, the cops were on alert.
So the first occupation, you got it over with, and then you came for a second time.
Yeah, but understand the first occupation, because for the next couple of Sundays, the cops were on alert, watching, because they knew that we weren't going to take this line down when they beat up and arrested our members, and they were right. The thing is, what were we going to do? How were we going to do it? So they kept looking at us. Imagine me at 19. They were looking at us. They weren't looking at our parents, our grandparents, the older people from this community, the women, las doñas, as you were saying. They hid the hammers, the chains, all that under their clothing, and they walked right in. We met them around here.
So they just came with a Bible and they were walking into church and
Right.
with church service for Sunday, but they were
Right.
bringing in what you guys need.
Right. So and some of our guys, you know, got stopped, got frisked. They didn't find anything. Nobody frisked those old ladies. And we didn't force those women to do that. You can't, because they could go up to the cops and say, look what they got me doing. They volunteered. This was also their idea. Because they all
Say Sally,
a big
Pablo's
thing,
mother was usually
Yeah.
at the head of that.
a big thing in our community was un abuso. When people, you know, and abuse. When people wondered about us because we did seem militant and we seemed, but then when they saw what the reaction was, you know, when they saw that like cops were just being sent to like kick ass, you know, they were like, it's un abuso. And then they were like, you know, what can I do for you young men? Some of them, some of what they did, maybe they made us a huge pot of rice and beans. You know, whatever it was.
They did their part.
Right, right.
So the ladies, that doñas bringing in what you needed with the chains and hammers and all that. The casket story.
The
That's
next
second
year,
time.
following
Right.
year.
That bring me to that, because I don't think people will realize what the story is, and there's a myth to it. But you guys were involved in it. How does
there
that?
was a huge problem in the prisons. They were overcrowded. The conditions were awful. There was a
Suicides.
question as to whether or not some inmates actually had killed themselves or they were being killed. I mean, really, it was bad. I mean, to the point where the so-called mainstream media, David Susskind, you know, they had shows like what's going on in the prisons. You got to remember that there wasn't a watchdog panel then like there is now. The Board of Corrections didn't exist. So, you know, we had guys in the prisons that supported us, you know, with mail back and forth. And we thought there was, one of our members who was arrested on nonsense, so-called loitering, was found hung in the tombs. And so we said, okay, as the kind of like the culmination of everything that had been going on with the prisons, we took over the church again. And we took his casket from the funeral parlor, right? And we marched it in here and we took the church again. And this time, because things had escalated so much, we put on a display of a couple of guys with guns on either side of the casket. That was really the extent of it. But
It was meant to send a message.
yeah, I mean, two guys with guns aren't going to stop the New York Police Department.
So there was no intent on your part to assault any police officer or take down any or
No, that would have been suicide, you know.
And you weren't dumb at that point.
No.
You're young, but not foolish.
No.
But so you go through all of that. Mission accomplished. Was it or not? The church was doing its part. You sort of led the congregation also through some transformation that things they need to do. There's still there's still some semblance of the program, a lunch program that is once a week here. Some I think understand also. They're trying to do their part. 45 years later, we're in a New York City that people think, especially among, I gotta say it, I see some of the young people and have no connection. I'm glad that you're being invited to speak. Mickey, I know that you're also, but there are a lot of elected officials now from our community. Some of them, you know, even from not just Puerto Rican, Dominicans, and now we have the first Mexican American, we have other people, we have an Ecuadorian in the state assembly. Is this what it was all about, to get people elected, and then they have no notion of how much sacrifice it was? Not that I'm making you guys out here, but you did your part.
No, but understand, even back then, there were Puerto Ricans and other Latinos in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and there was a what we call poverty pimps, where they got grants and then they basically enriched their own pockets for money that was supposed to go in the war on poverty, and they built up their own little fiefdoms, turfs, and they appointed each other, and they would create these organizations that's supposed to be community organizations, but they were all making money. And they were like patronage jobs without being in the government, but everybody in the government knew about it, because then they would need these people to go out and get the votes for them or get the petitions for them. You know, so from City Hall all the way down, they knew, and we were opposed to that, which is one of the reasons why we caught so much hell. We didn't really catch a lot of hell because of the police. That only went so far. It was because we went after those guys. We did leaflets, flyers, we would break up their rallies. We would say, these guys have not done anything for us for years, and we put them on notice.
And they had political ties to the machine of the Democrats.
That's right.
Which was still dominating
That's right.
politics.
And our thing was, it doesn't mean anything to us. That machine doesn't exist here because it's only for you guys. And I mean, we look.
I should mention that Herman Badillo was borough president-elect in 1965.
Herman Badillo in the beginning,
and then he was going to.
was
then he
not
went
a
to
friend
Congress.
of ours.
He was
okay?
not a friend of yours.
And but he told me years later,
First Puerto Rican.
you're the best organization Puerto Ricans ever put together. And I know it killed him to say that, but it was true. We were and we are. That's why we're here talking today. You know, the point was never to get, although she's a good person, Melissa Mark Viperito, but it wasn't to get more of that. The point was to go the other way from the bottom up, for people to take hold of things themselves so that when one of these people stepped out of line, you grab them and go, oh yeah.
Accountability.
Yeah. And that was the point. And in a way, by us, now we made youthful mistakes, but we contributed in a way to our own, but we also were targeted by the FBI's COINTELPRO program, right, counterintelligence program, right, us, the Black Panthers, I mean, they subverted us. They sent people in to break it up. So the combination of our youthful mistakes and what the government was throwing at us to disrupt us, I mean, I'm very proud of the 6.5 or 7 years that I was in the Young Lords, and I wish it could have gone longer, but it didn't, you know, but we set an example for people to follow. And it's up to all of us to pick that torch up and do something with it. Now, a lot of people have, but is there still a lot that needs to be done? Yes.
So when I hear you and you're still passionate about this, which is great, 45 years later.
Yeah, I can't
and you don't need your fro and you don't need your beret. But I see it. I hear it, brother. I hear it. Mickey and Pablo. And by the way, you could call Yoruba.
That's right. I'll tell you a story about that.
Yeah, but before we get to the story, because I want people to understand there's a significant. It isn't just symbolism. There has to be some substance. The electoral process. We now have elected officials who are young, not so young, who have, as a result of a lot of the sacrifices and the crazy things you all did, young people, I should say. Is the electoral process, has it improved anything? Is it good for us? Has it been good for us? Mickey, I know I ask you every time you tell me. I got to tell you, Mickey tells me when he says, the vote, when he says, go out and vote, he says, please don't encourage them. That's what he said.
Well, actually, Thoreau said that. Don't vote it only encourages
But you
them.
would use it very well to apply to us.
Right. I think one of the things is that, we created the objective conditions in our community, for a lot of these Latino elected officials to run for office. They ran on platforms of nationalism. They really tapped into something that we had and the times. It was not only us, because we were also just a product of our times, awoke in our people. I think the problem is, and again, we were not interested in running for office or developing an electoral strategy. At
that wasn't
time.
part of
that was not part of our 13-point program. Let's say, and I think the fundamental issue, I think, is that it's good to get good people in government, but there has to be an organization where they agree to and holds them accountable. There is not one elected official out there, Latino or otherwise, that's held accountable by their community and their constituency. So, and that world is a very seductive world.
So then because, the Bronx Science speaking here, because nature abhors a vacuum, in that vacuum where you don't have the people holding their officials accountable, money holds people accountable.
And it's very
so
seductive.
Where the money goes, that's what they're accountable to. And obviously, we don't have the money. We have to make up for the lack of money another way, which is our numbers, and used wisely. We have been discouraged from using our numbers wisely because, every time, there's nonsense about how they report about politics and people, I don't want to get involved in that. Well, yeah, who does? Or when they, for example, Melissa Mark Viperito, Hillary Clinton, let's say women, right? Rather than really analyze what are their positions with, what do you think of her hairstyle? And I know this for a fact because I've been in the meetings and TV stations where the morning meeting, half the meeting is, she changed her hairstyle. What is this? How are women going to react to that? Did you see the dress she was wearing? They don't do that with the men, right? And for most people, no, this is nonsense. So they don't want to get involved. The average person doesn't want to get involved.
But he brings up a point, because part of the Young Lords thing is it was male dominated. Through history, people who have looked at it, but these guys were all, chauvinists and they excluded women.
The Young Lords?
Yeah, but no, this is what some people say.
Yeah, these
and
are people looking from way on the outside, because the people right across the street in the tenement building over there and the people around here, they all knew that half the organization was women, half the leaders were women.
Who was the first? You know, there was the first woman did play a role, and it's throughout. Who was the
From the very beginning.
There was a woman's.
From the very beginning, yeah. You know, the health organizer. You know, she was.
No. I mean, but let's be clear. The founders of the organization were 4 or 6 of us. They were men. You know, but like everything else, we were also going through a transformative period in our lives. You know, we were coming from our culture. We were coming from
Which is
being
machista
grown up,
culture.
which is a machista culture, right?
So we a lot of us who had come, like Juan Gonzalez or myself, who had come through other movements, we were aware of the growing feminist movement.
Right.
You know, you could not be aware of that. And then you were reminded by the women who did come to the organization. You know, so if you try to pull some stuff, they'll be like, "Que hello tuyo? Where are you coming from? Grow up." You know, and when you get told that in front of a bunch of people by a woman, you know, you just got cut.
Right.
You know. And she was right. What are you going to do? I remember one time here in the church, when we took over the church, there was a young guy who somehow thought, he was younger than the rest of us, that the macho thing, that we were like that kind of organization. And we had given him some responsibility, and he had ordered some woman to do something, and she said, "Wait a minute, but I'm doing something else." This led to that, and he slapped her across the face. Which, you know, we did not do that. We with the guys, we did. Nobody did that. And David Perez saw this and came over, and there were like 30 young lords right out here. And he said to the guy, "What happened?" And the guy realized he messed up, and he said, "I don't know, my hand slipped." David hauled off and knocked this guy to the ground and said, "My hand slipped." And that made the point. You know, we did not tolerate. We tried. We see the point when we talk about the revolution and the revolution. The point was to try to change for the better, change ourselves. You couldn't just talk stuff. You as they say today, you got to walk the walk. You know, you can't just talk the talk. And we tried to do that to the point where I remember in Puerto Rico when we had 2 branches in Puerto Rico, which was a mistake. But when we went to Puerto Rico, and the guys were trying to, practice what they were. So, the fight against machismo. So I went over there, and there was a woman who was coming, recruiting into the organization, who was a knockout. I mean, I gotta say straight up. I mean, she was amazing. But she didn't understand this whole thing about machismo, because she didn't come from that. She came from guys hitting on her. She hit on guys, something's wrong. So she came up and wanted to know if we were a gay organization.
At that point.
And guys.
Y lo digo en español.
Yeah.
Ustedes son medio
Yeah. So the women tried explaining to her the guy. She never understood that.
Look, and that's another thing that you just mentioned in terms of the gay issue, and I think you've said this publicly a number of times, is that, again, growing up in a society that's, homophobic, that's racist, that's sexist and all that, that's the revolution within the revolution that Pablo talks about. That to be conscious about that and how you begin to disgorge yourself of that thinking and of that philosophy. And again, to quote Pablo, we had gay people in our organization and dealt with the gay question long before it was in vogue.
Yeah,
I think that's your exact quote.
You had a gay caucus.
We had a gay caucus in the organization.
Mickey Brett was one of the.
I've talked
But nowadays you hear even at the city council, we're progressives. We're the ones that discovered the, So old news for you guys.
When I've met, homosexual groups and some of the work, the stories around AIDS, and you meet people and stuff, they're shocked when I tell them, yeah, we were doing this in 1969. I mean, again, because unless you bother to ask what you're doing, then you hear these. I mean, to this day, there's a lot of people who think we were a gang. In New York, we were never a gang. I mean, I can understand with the name Young Lords, that sounds, but we were never. We started from the beginning. We were an organization. We were a radical organization. There
And also
were
first
some people who were
organization
gang members.
to have Afro Boricuas in leadership.
dealing with the black issue of our
'Cause-
community,
yeah.
because there's a lot
Because
of
all
I
of
would
those
say
other
something.
organizations before us, like
Right.
PRCDP and all of that, they were mainly the lighter skinned Puerto Ricans. You know, they were part of that, number one. The other part that I want to mention is that the organization, about, I would say, by 25% was African American
Yeah.
and other.
Yeah.
25% of the young lords were actually African Americans.
There were some white people in the Young Lords. There were some Asian. I mean, you know, in Philadelphia. I remember I was in Philadelphia.
And those are not the people that infiltrated you.
No. The ones that infiltrated, they were, you know, that which was a problem then also for law enforcement, because their own races, and they didn't have enough Puerto Rican or other Latino agents.
Right.
So that was a problem. Who's going to infiltrate? That's actually why the NYPD took the lead over the FBI in terms of when they infiltrated us, because they took the guys who were working undercover in narcotics, black and Puerto Rican guys, and had them infiltrate us.
Completely 45 years ago. It's just, you think about it. I remember walking through here. I used to, I read the reports. I was as young as you guys, but I wasn't as daring. I didn't know what you guys were up to. It seemed crazy to me. You risked your lives. You did a lot of good. I think that, in a way, I'm amazed that 45 years later, it isn't just what some people think, or some in our community say, they're living in the past, or they want to, and that's said. But I'm pleased to know that there is a recognition, even in terms of changing the corner, the street, 111th Street to Young Lords Way, that you return to the People's Church. That's still what amazes me, and what I'm really, really bothered by, the fact that some of the things that you struggle for still are a struggle today. Yeah. We can only do so much. There's a big celebration after the renaming is done. We're going to get together, reminisce. I don't think you guys will get back together again, but maybe you can inspire some of the young people, some of the youth in our communities in New York City. Because
I think part of the dedication on Saturday, and I'm doing the welcoming, and I'm going to dedicate it to two groups of people. One is the cadre of the organization, not the leadership, because it was those young men and women that used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to pick up kids, to take them to the breakfast programs, to take them to school, that really made the Young Lords. And the other group of people that we're dedicating it to is the youth, because there are some young people out there that are trying to keep the legacy of the Young Lords open. So that's something that's going to be said on Friday, on Saturday.
It's happening Saturday, and we're going to come back to the story. I know the Yoruba part, you did it because you wanted to recognize your African ancestry.
Well, but there's a twist in that story I'll tell you later. And also, before we sum up, I also want to tell you a Ray Kelly story.
Ray Kelly?
Mm-hmm.
Let's get it in quickly, because we're going to say it.
Ray Kelly was a sergeant when we took over this church. Yeah.
He was a patrol person?
Yeah,
he was and as I became a reporter, and he became the police commissioner twice, he would yell at me because he said I froze my toes standing outside that church.
Because of you.
Right. But he also said they lied to us. Now this is the
Ray Kelly telling you this.
Said that their own people, their chiefs, lied and told them that we were communists, that we were stockpiling guns, that we were this and that. And they sent guys in who reported back and said that's not what they're doing. And Kelly actually listened to some of those guys when some of his bosses didn't. He said, you were just trying to do something for your community. I mean, you were loud about it, but you were trying to do something for your community.
And he froze his toes.
Yes.
For City and State TV, I'm Gerson Borrero with Pablo Yoruba Guzman, Mickey Melendez. Guys, I hope the spirit never, never dies in you. And Ray Kelly, I'm coming for you so you can, deny this or tell me the full story from the NYPD side of things, okay? Gerson Borrero for City and State TV. Thanks for tuning in.